What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw Media. So before I get into this video, I want to give a shout out to the brother Brendan Olson for the $10 donation via the PayPal. Much respect to you for once again showing love to Too Raw. And, he's one of the great, Brendan, is one of the great basketball minds that I've encountered in my 15 years being on YouTube as a commentator and an uploader. He really is. In this particular video, I want to talk about how I would say over the past 20 years, Dr. J's legacy and his ranking as an all-time great player has decreased to a point where it's insulting to what he actually accomplished as a basketball player. Now, I understand that he only played 11 years in the NBA. And I say only because that doesn't sound much compared to some of these guys today who, because of the lack of physicality in the game, acceptable load management, easing of the NBA schedule, advancements in medicine, and the not so secret that many of these guys are using performance enhancing drugs. But anyway, Julius Erving, when you combine his ABA and NBA career, I think you have to look at him at the very least as a top 15 all-time player when you look at his total resume. First of all, before I go to the numbers, even though we always talk about Larry Bird and Magic Johnson having saved the NBA in the 80s, and they did, Julius Erving was responsible, in my opinion, for keeping the NBA afloat from the time of the ABA-NBA merger in 1976 until the arrival of Bird and Magic and then other subsequent stars throughout the 80s. He kept the NBA afloat because as great as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was, as great as, say, Moses Malone was, as great as some of these other stars were, Robert Parrish and the others, they weren't exactly the most loquacious, verbose, articulate, or, in Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's case, pleasant personalities. They didn't have that outgoing, jovial personality to help sail the league, and as far as Madison Avenue is concerned. Julius Erving was that one guy. Julius Erving also, to me, transcended, at a time when this was more important, race. Julius Erving was beloved by black fans. He was also beloved and accepted by many white fans. Because Julius Erving wasn't, even though he had the big afro and, all of that, he wasn't what you would call militant in his personality. There's many people who even said, his teammates that said he was a bit of a square. But that was cool, because that made him acceptable to all fans. They loved him. He was a doctor. He also, along with Pete Maravich earlier in the decade, helped to popularize a new style of basketball that we hadn't seen in the 50s and 60s. Don't get me wrong, I love watching, back when they used to actually show the games on TV, games from the 60s and even the late 50s. But I can understand from a casual perspective how the game could be a little bit boring to watch. But starting with Pete Maravich in the 1970s, early 1970s, the NBA began to recognize the threat that the ABA posed to the league. So they began to loosen up some of the defensive rules. Players no longer able to double hand check and only single hand check with one hand. Before that, guys were able to double hand check. That's what made what Wilt Chamberlain did so phenomenal, because bigs used to be able to use both hands and were more physical with hand checking. Then it lessened to one hand. That's why, starting in the early 70s, you saw Wilt being able to dunk more often because defensive players could not, they couldn't be as physical and they couldn't be quite on you as much as they once were. They couldn't be encroach on your spacing. I guess the best way to put it, as much as they used to. And I know I'm getting way off topic here, but, so they started changing rules. They also began letting in more and more players who were playing above the rim. But none soared higher than the doctor, Julius Erving. He changed the culture of basketball. First in the ABA, then he worked his magic in the NBA. And he became, in his later years, the undisputed ambassador of basketball. He was the epitome of class, and virtually everybody in the NBA looked up to him and respected him. Now, let's talk about the accomplishments as to why he is at least a top 15 all-time player. Dr. J was a three-time NBA champion. Of course, he won a championship in '83 with the 76ers, but he won 2 championships in the ABA. He was a 2-time Finals MVP. Both of those MVPs, technically playoff MVPs, were in the ABA. He was a 4-time league MVP, combined ABA and NBA. 16-time All-Star. Every season of his career, whether he was in the ABA or in the NBA, he was an All-Star every year. 2-time All-Star Game MVP. 9 times All-NBA, ABA first team. 3 times All-NBA, ABA second team. I think it was 1976. He was first team, All-Defensive first team in the ABA. He was on the All-Rookie first team. 3 times he won the scoring title in the ABA. He is the ABA all-time MVP. He's on the ABA all-time team. He was voted to the 35th anniversary teams, the 50th anniversary teams, and the 75th anniversary teams. This is significant that he's on the 35th anniversary team because you got to remember that team was voted in. That voting was back in 1980. At that point, Julius Erving had only been in the NBA for 4 years. But I think also his accomplishments in the ABA were recognized subconsciously or unofficially by the voters at that time. He won the inaugural Slam Dunk Championship in the ABA back in 1976. Perhaps the most iconic dunk of all time, the free throw line dunk that he successfully converted to win that championship. He's in the Basketball Hall of Fame. He's in the College Basketball Hall of Fame. He never missed the playoffs in his 16-year professional career. He is the ABA scoring average leader with 28.7 points per game. When you combine his ABA and NBA career, he scored 30,026 points. At the time of his retirement in 1987, he was only the 3rd player to have accomplished that after Wilt Chamberlain and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. His career scoring average is 24.2 points per game. He pulled down 10,525 rebounds in his career for an 8.5 rebound average. He dished out 5,176 assists for a 4.2 assists per game average. If my memory is correct, I think he swiped 2,272 steals and blocked 1,941 shots in his career. In his 2 years of college basketball, he averaged 26.3 points and an amazing 20.2 rebounds per game. In the ABA playoffs, the Doctor averaged 31.1 points per game, 12.9 rebounds, and 5.2 assists per contest. In his rookie year, the Doctor averaged 27.3 points, 15.7 rebounds, and 4 assists per contest. When you combine his career, the ABA and NBA career, there's no doubt in my mind that Julius Erving is at least the third greatest small forward of all time. At least. Some may even put him as the second greatest. Increasingly, some people don't have him in the top 20 or top 25. And I think that's because, as I have feared, as time has gone on, and because the media never mentions them, the media tell lies, people don't recognize the ABA. You hear them say, oh, the ABA really wasn't that good. Well, if that's the case, well, then why was it true that in the latter years of the ABA, the last 3 or 4 years, the ABA was starting to beat the NBA more than the NBA was beating them in interleague play? Yeah, the first few years, the ABA was inferior. But after 1971-72, I would say the ABA caught up, and I would argue that they may have been even a little bit more talented. I tell you one thing, they were definitely more talented when it came to guards than the NBA. The NBA had the advantage when it came to defense and when it came to big men. But when it came to guards, the ABA definitely had the advantage. And I also say, that when you look at the amount of players that played in the ABA concurrently with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar winning all those MVPs, you have to make the observation that he was helped by a weakened NBA. Because so many great players are playing in the ABA and not in the NBA. So, you know what I'm saying? Me personally, I think he has an argument to be top 10. I would probably put him top 12. I probably would rank him right along with Tim Duncan and Shaquille O'Neal, who I kind of have as like the borderline in my top 10, like toward the end, 8, 9, 10, whatever. I would probably have Julius Erving in that order, probably right after Shaq. When you combine his ABA and NBA, maybe top 10, top 11. But he's definitely, when you combine when you look at his totality of his career, his entire career, Julius Erving should not be anything lower than 15 in my opinion. Should be higher than 15 in my opinion. But anyway, that's all I got to say on that one. Tell me what you guys think.